Today's lesson 2.4, we're going to be adding and subtracting rational expressions. And remember, a rational expression is just a fraction. So we know, because we learned it in elementary school, middle school, we know that when you add fractions, you need to first find a common denominator, right? And honestly, in the last thing we did in our last lesson, I'm going to slide this in. This is from lesson 2.3. We talked about a least common multiple. That is what we are going to use for our common denominator. So let's write that down. We learned to find a common denominator. We are going to find the least common multiple. We'll abbreviate that LCM. That's going to be our common denominator. Okay, so let's take a look at this first example. It says simplify the rational expression. We're adding two fractions together, so we need to find that common denominator. I know a lot of us will just look at 6 and 8 and say, well, 6 and 8, we can look at it. If we can't, that's okay. Let's come over here and let's go find it. A 6 breaks into a 2 times 3, and 8 breaks into a 2 times 4, and then that 4 breaks into 2 times 2. So I need every factor. Sorry, I guess I got a little ahead of myself. I need every factor from the 6, which is a 2 and a 3. And then I need every factor from the 8, which is a 2, I have, another 2, I don't have, another 2, I don't have. Okay, so I need a 2 and a 3, I have that there. I need 3 2's, and I have that there. Perfect. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. That is our common denominator. And do this. Great. Well, the big question is, what are we missing here? 6 to a 24, we're missing a 4, right? So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4. I didn't actually do anything, I just wrote it down. Now 4 times 6 we already have. Here, the 8 goes to the 24. I need to multiply both of those by 3. So now let's clean this up a little bit. In the top, if I distribute that, I have 8x minus 20 all over 24 plus 3x plus 3 all over 24. So now that we have a common denominator, the rule is the denominator stays the same, and we're just going to add our numerators. I didn't actually do anything, I just put it all in one fraction. So now we can combine our like terms. I have 11x, and I have a negative 20, and then a positive 3, which is a negative 17, all over 24. Now I went ahead and boxed it in. The next thing I really should do is ask if I can simplify my answer. But there's nothing I can do with this. There's nothing to pull out. There's no GCF. So we'll leave it alone. Okay. Good. Let's take a look at this next one. So we've got t plus 2 over t plus 3 over t cubed. So again, I want to find my least common multiple. So I'm going to factor each denominator. So my first denominator is a t, well, that's it, right? It doesn't factor anymore. My second denominator is t cubed, which is t times t times t. So my least common multiple, it needs every factor from the first denominator. I need every factor from the second denominator. I need 3 t's, and right now I only have 1. So I need 2 more. My least common multiple is t cubed. So that's my common denominator. Well, this fraction already has 1t. I need a total of 3 of them, so I need to multiply by 2 more. And I need to do that on the top and bottom. So I have t squared times the quantity t plus 2. Okay. So my second denominator, I'm not missing anything. I have 3 t's, and I needed 3 t's. So I don't need to multiply this one by anything. So I'm going to leave that alone. So let's clean up our numerator. So I have t cubed plus 2t squared over t cubed plus 3 over t cubed. And now that we have a common denominator, we can add those fractions together. The denominator is t cubed. We're going to add straight across to get t cubed plus 2t squared plus 3. Again, I went and boxed in my answer. As I was boxing it in, I was looking at it. There's nothing we can factor in the numerator, so we just leave that one as is. All right. Now the next one is different because we have addition and subtraction in our denominator. So we're going to go find our least common multiple. So remember up here, we took our 6 and we factored it. We took our 8 and we factored it. I want to factor both of these. Well, if I look at x minus 1, there's no GCF. It's not a quadratic. It doesn't factor anymore, so it itself is a factor. So in my first denominator, I have a factor of x minus 1. In my second denominator, there's nothing to factor, right? There's no GCF. It's not a quadratic. So it itself is a factor. Putting parentheses around it sometimes helps us with that. So the least common multiple says you need every factor from each denominator. So I need the x minus 1 from the first denominator. And I need this factor, which I don't have yet, so we'll just tack it onto our list here. So my least common multiple is x minus 1 times x plus 1. That's my common denominator. So my first fraction, so all I did was I just wrote down 2 fractions with subtraction between them. My first denominator has the x minus 1, but I need it to also have an x plus 1 in the bottom. So we're going to multiply the top and bottom by x plus 1. My second fraction has the x plus 1, but I need it to also have an x minus 1. So let's multiply the top. All right, so let's go ahead and multiply these out. In the top, when I FOIL, I get x squared plus 3x plus 2. If you need to pause the video and multiply those out, that's fine. My second fraction, when I distribute the x, is x squared minus x. All right, so we can now subtract. My denominator is x minus 1 times x plus 1. In the numerator, I'm going to subtract what I have here. So x squared minus 3x plus 2 minus the whole numerator, x squared minus x. All right, so once I distribute that negative, I'm no longer going to need parentheses anymore. So in my numerator, I have x squared minus 3x plus 2 minus x squared plus x. All right, so my denominator is still x minus 1 and x plus 1. And in my numerator, I have an x squared and a minus x squared. I like that. Let's see, I've got a negative 3x plus x, so I'm left with negative 2x, and then a plus 2. Yeah, making sure I got all my stuff in there. So if we can reduce what we have, well, let's try to factor the numerator. Let's take out a negative 2. And when I take a negative 2 out of the top, that leaves me with a positive x and a negative 1. And on the bottom I have x minus 1. Oh, you can't even see that. I have x minus 1x plus 1. And that's awesome because we can get rid of, we can reduce, and we're left with a negative 2 all over the quantity x plus 1. Super important that even once we've subtracted those fractions, we ask if we can reduce once we're done. All right, let's flip it over to the back. Let's take a look at this next one. I have 3b over b minus 5, and I have 15 over 5 minus b. The denominators are not the same, but with our work over the last 2 days, we know that they're super close. And we also said the only difference here is that this b is positive, this b is negative, this 5 is negative, this 5 is positive. So if I take that 5 minus b and I factor out a negative 1, remember factoring something out is like dividing by it. So I took 5 minus b, I factored out a negative, that leaves me with negative 5 plus b, and if I just rearrange the order here, I now have b minus 5. So we can very easily leave the first fraction alone and just rewrite the second denominator, quantity b minus 5. Why would we do that? Well, because then we can slide that negative anywhere with the 15 or out in front. And now our denominators are exactly the same. And so now we can go straight across. My denominator is b minus 5, and my numerator is 3b minus 15. I'm not going to put a box around that because I can factor out a 3 in my numerator, and we're left with 3 over 1, which is 3. Good. Certainly pause whenever you need to. All right, let's take a look at this one. We're trying to add fractions. We need a common denominator, and to find that common denominator, we are going to factor both denominators. So my first denominator, I can pull out a c, and I'm left with c plus 3. In my second denominator, I can pull out a 3, and I'm left with c plus 3. So my least common multiple, I need every single factor from the first fraction, or from the first denominator. So I need the c and the c plus 3. And I need everything from the second denominator. So I need the 3, which is not on my list yet, and the c plus 3, which is already on my list. So my common denominator is 3 times c plus 3. I just rearranged the order. All right, so remember this denominator factored into the c times c plus 3. I have the c, I have the c plus 3. I'm missing that 3, so I need to multiply the top and the bottom by 3. And I'll go ahead and distribute that 3. My second fraction, remember, was the 3 and the c plus 3. So I have the 3, I have the c plus 3. I'm missing the c, so I need to multiply the top and the bottom by c. And so when I distribute that c in, I get c squared plus 4c. So my denominators match. My denominator is 3c times c plus 3, and I'm adding. So I have 3c plus 3 plus c squared plus 4c. Woo! Let's clean that up. Let's combine some like terms in the top there. I'm going to reorder. So I start with my c squared. I have a total of 7c, and then I've got a plus 3. And my denominator stays exactly the same. Now, as I boxed it in, or before I boxed it in, I was looking to make sure that I could not factor the top. And I can't. There's no factors of 3 that will add to 7. So we'll leave that alone. There's our final answer. All right, last one. I encourage you to pause the video and try this on your own to see, at least to get the common denominator. Okay, so I would pause if I were you, and unpause once you think you have your common denominator. All right, so here we go. This denominator is going to factor into x minus 4 and x minus 3. This denominator is going to factor into x minus 3 and x plus 1. So my least common multiple says I need every factor from the first fraction, so x minus 4 and x minus 3. And I need every factor from the second fraction, so I need an x minus 3, which we already have, and we need an x plus 1, which we don't have yet, so we'll just tack it on the list. That's going to be my common denominator, x minus 4, x minus 3, x plus 1. All right, so let's start with that first fraction. The first fraction has the x minus 4 and the x minus 3, but we need it to also have that x plus 1. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by x plus 1. So I distribute that 6 to get 6x plus 6. My second fraction has the x minus 3 and the x plus 1, but it needs the x minus 4, so we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by x minus 4. We better FOIL those. So let's see, I get 5x squared minus 20x plus 9x minus 36. All right, we are adding these fractions. Whoops, messing up my parentheses down there. So I'm just going to add across. So I have 6x plus 6 plus 5x squared minus 11x minus 36. Let's combine some like terms. I'm going to put it in standard form as I go. So I have a 5x squared. When I combine my x's, I'm going to be left with negative 5x, and a 6 and a negative 36 gives me a negative 30. Woo! I would love it if this would reduce. Let's try to factor. Let's factor a 5 out of the numerator. So let's see, we've got x minus 4, x minus 3, and x plus 1 on the bottom still. When I take out that 5, I'm left with x squared minus x minus 6. Let's just keep going, see what happens, see if we can factor what's left. So I have that 5. The top I have, let's see, x, and how about a negative 3 and a positive 2? I think that does it for us. I love this. The x minus 3's are gone, and I'm left with 5 times the quantity x plus 2 all over x minus 4 times the quantity x plus 1. Woo! Lots of great review stuff in there. Okay. Biggest thing to focus on is, were you able to come up with the least common multiple before we really got into the meat of the problem? Okay, so make sure we're factoring each denominator completely and looking to make sure we put each factor in our list.